Watch this.
How about that weather out there? Nice and warm, am I right? I think if you look on the temperature gauge, it's over 100 by far. And it's going to be close to 110 degrees this weekend, so watch out for that. Now, the hot spell, as you know, it's lasted here a few weeks now, and I'm sure during that time, someone in your life has probably made a joke or a comment about climate change and the heat we're all experiencing, of course. Now, the scientific community, they agree. Evidence shows that human activity is impacting the planet's climate overwhelmingly. And anytime, though, you bring up climate change or the human impacts on the planet, there will be those that speak up and say it's untrue. Science and data, they show otherwise, but some people, they say they just don't buy the climate change facts. Well, have you ever wondered why there are skeptics of climate change, and why do the skeptics believe what they do? Well, two researchers at the University of Idaho, they dove into the world of climate change skepticism, and they researched why people are skeptical about climate change and where those beliefs come from. They also set out to find if people are firm in their opinions on climate change or open to changing those opinions. It's an interesting conversation we want to show you here on the 208. Climate change and the human impact of that can be a divisive topic. Although the scientific community agrees overwhelmingly that human activity is impacting dangerous climate change, there will always be skeptics. University of Idaho researchers Dilshani Sarasandra and Kristen Haltener interviewed climate change skeptics across the Northwest to find out more about their beliefs. The pair found three main reasons for the skepticism on climate change. The first, conspiracy theories.
People have this perception that some international body is seeking to acquire money and power through climate change. A second grounding is in religion, a perspective that God created Earth for us to use and therefore wouldn't make it possible for us to ruin God's creation. And or humans are arrogant to even think we could influence God's creation. And then a third group of people really had a distrust in science. They perceived scientific research as biased towards believing in climate change, having incentives that might sway scientists.
The duo approaches the topic of discussing climate change from different perspectives. Dilshani grew up in Sri Lanka, where she witnessed health issues and poverty associated with pollution and rising temperatures.
Thought a lot about how climate change impacts are putting significant burdens on people in the global south, especially small island nations. So I had a personal interest in the topic, plus my research is driven by the interest in public attitudes towards controversial science topics such as climate change.
Kristen took a wide view of the world as she had her first child. She worries about the planet's health for her son's generation.
I started to have a lot of climate anxiety, and I was talking to Dilshani about it and about sort of where I come from in terms of my research and where she comes from in hers. And we decided to put our climate anxiety into action with this project.
The pair found that some people were deeply committed to their skepticism and position on climate change. Others were not as firm and open to discussion.
People who are skeptical about climate change are not necessarily anti-environmental. We found that there's a lot of overlap in concern about three specific areas. One is pollution. A direct quote from someone we interviewed was, "No one wants to breathe polluted air." Habitat destruction and loss. People are concerned about losing animal species, especially people who are hunters or hikers. And then a third is actually support for renewable energy. We found that half the people we surveyed supported expansion of solar and wind energy.
The matter of perspective is a big takeaway from the interviews and surveys that the pair did with skeptics. The point can also be echoed by the authors, who have a book set to be published on this topic next year, in the sense that this duo together, they come from different experiences, but they have a shared perspective.
We grew up in such different environments, she in the United States and me in Sri Lanka, but we care about an issue that is really affecting everyone at a global level. So coming together from those different perspectives and working on a project together, really our book is like a culmination of years of work. So we are very excited about that.
A major takeaway of the in-depth research and reports is that some climate skeptics are willing to talk and change their opinion. A key to that, though, is finding common ground.
A lot of the conversations about climate change to be effective can start from places of shared common ground. So perhaps, being hunters or being hikers or enjoying the outdoors or being grandparents and worrying about the futures of your grandchildren, right? There is a lot of common ground that we can begin these conversations from to sort of identify what we care about in a mutual way that can drive policy.
And that interview and segment is just a small taste of the research and a preview of the book that they're working on for next year. It'll be out next year, and we'll keep you posted on that. But to learn more about their work and really what they're talking about and more of the insight and the in-depth analysis, we're going to have a link to that in this story at ktvb.com. Highly recommend reading it. I thought it was really fascinating going through it earlier today. Okay, something a lot of you have been waiting for, the annual tradition making its full return. Here it is. San Inazio Festival is back, and if you haven't heard of this, it's a summer staple in the City of Trees. And right now at the 5 o'clock hour, I'm told the event is back in full force. And our Andrew Bartline, he joins us live down from the Basque Block in downtown Boise. Andrew, how's the temperature out there, and more importantly, what's the activity look like?
Well, it's cooking, Joe, but we found some shade, so me and our photojournalist, Ollie, are doing just fine. You can kind of see it starting to pick up. It did kick off at 5, so right now it's really starting to officially start. But we're joined with Annie right now, who works at the Basque Museum and Cultural Center, and Annie has a lot of fun history for us, and I think the first thing I'm curious about is the namesake of this festival. Where did this come from?
Yeah, so it's called San Inazio Basque Festival, or Saint Ignatius in English. But Saint Ignatius was a Basque saint, given sainthood, on July 31st, 1556, I believe. And he is a patron saint of the Basques in general. So the Boise Basque community decided that was the saint that they were going to celebrate their festival around. And so that's the same thing that happens throughout the U.S. Basque community and the Basque community in the Basque country itself. A lot of their festivals are based on a Basque saint.
And talk to us about here in Boise, the Basque Block. How did this come to be? How did people from Basque Country come to the United States in general, but more so here locally?
Yeah, they came to the U.S. looking for work, like a lot of immigrants coming here. Between the late 1800s and the mid-1900s, they came specifically to the western area to work in agriculture. And at that time, that meant a lot of sheep herding here in the Boise Treasure Valley area. And so they thrived in that area, brought more people over from the Basque Country at that time. And then once they established themselves, generations later, start establishing these festivals, the Basque Museum, the Cultural Center, and start bringing things like a festival or dance groups, music groups, to celebrate the culture a little bit more.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Annie. And here's what is established right now. If you want to walk up here with me, Ollie, and kind of show the scenery as it's starting to pick up more. We'll throw it back to you at the station, Joe, but looks like some music's about to kick off. I'm told some dancers are going to be out here sometime soon as well. Joe?
Well, and if you're worried about the refreshments down there because of the heat, do not worry. The Basque community in Boise, they have awesome refreshments, drinks, food, everything for the whole family. So get out there, drink some water. If you've never been down to San Inazio, it is awesome. That's our Andrew Bartline and Ali out there this afternoon. Thank you so much, the pair of you. We'll check in at 6 o'clock. Okay, there may be something on a lot of your minds out there, but I'll tell you, the odds, they aren't great. They are 1 in 305.5 million chance. What are we talking about here? Oh, we're talking about the Mega Millions lottery tonight. The 1 in 305 million chance, though, it's not stopping people from buying their $2 ticket before the Mega Millions drawing later tonight, 9 p.m. local time. Now, the prize, it sits at more than $1.2 billion. That's billion with a B. And it's the third largest in the game's history. So we were curious this morning, what would people do with the money if they won? Well, we hit the streets of downtown Boise to ask you, the people of Boise, what would you do if you won $1.2 billion?
If I won $1 billion, I would quit my job and I would become a philanthropist.
That'd be pretty fun.
Yeah, all the pet projects and things that are important to me, I would have money to spend to do them.
Ooh, a whole $1 billion. Let's see. I guess the right answer is to give to charity, right?
The right answer.
Yeah, and then of course spend some on myself. But honestly, I think I'd go traveling also. I mean, what else would you do with $1 billion? Yeah, I would say too much money, but hey, you could just give it to everyone at that point, right? Dollar bills to everyone, but yeah.
I would spend it on building my own privatized space fleet and begin terraforming Mars.
Okay. Then NASA can contract with you.
There we go, yeah.
Okay.
Screw Elon, I'm out here. We're on it.
Charity, Ukraine, and I would donate it to like other things. I'd also give some to myself.
That's a good choice.
Only a little. So do I get $1 billion?
I wish. If I had $1 billion to give you, I would.
I would pay off all of my debt for myself and my family, and probably buy a little nice ranch house out in Texas in the hill country, and then give the rest of it away because I wouldn't need it.
I would make sure that my 6 grandchildren can go to college and have an amazing life.
Buy a few apartment complexes, probably.
Complexes?
Yeah.
Here in Boise, or would you all around?
Probably mostly Boise.
Okay.
It's popping off, so.
Oh, I'd buy a beautiful home. I'd travel the world. I'd put some money in the bank. It would just be great. I'd give some to my grandkids and my children. It'd be so fun.
It could be fun, or it could be a complete nightmare. Now, the jackpot for the drawing tonight, about $1.3 billion. Hear me out. How do you even begin to figure out where to put all of that money? I know there's a billion things you could spend it on, but where do you keep this money? Normally, banks only insure funds up to $250,000. So if you were to split up, we'll just say $1 billion here between banks, putting $250,000 in each individual bank, you would need about 2,400 banks, more than 2,000 banks just to hold all your money. Not practical to do all of that. So if you win tonight, you really wouldn't take home $1 billion. You'd likely take home something closer to $700 million after all the taxes and all the fees and all that. But it is a great problem to have, but it is probably pretty difficult to navigate. So just in case any of you win tonight, here's Boise financial expert Dave Petzo with some advice on what you should do if you win $1 billion.
Obviously, you've got a whole immense amount of things that suddenly overnight happen. You're now not really a billionaire after taxes, as we know, but it's a staggering amount of money. And so whether you should be taking it over a 20-year period, once up front, you're going to need a decision-making team, obviously, like lawyers, financial advisors. And why lawyers? Because you've got an estate tax problem now. I mean, overnight, you have an estate tax problem, and you don't know what to do tax-wise. And now you have to write a $300,000 check, or do you just take it over a 20-year period? It is overwhelming, and now everybody's also knocking on your door. Are they real friends? You never had to deal with that before because nobody came knocking on your door because you didn't have any money. Now all of a sudden you do, and you're the most popular guy in town, right? And so all these tough decisions happen for people. It is an overwhelming experience. And I know everybody's out there going, yeah, sure, great. Okay, but I'm going to try it anyway. And so I get that. But it is always incredible to me how people can be in a very depressed state after winning something that they couldn't imagine winning, you know?
Dave Petzo would tell you, instead of buying the lottery ticket, maybe invest it in something else. But I'll tell you this, folks at home and my family, if you're watching, if you never see me again, it's because I won the lottery. Obviously, you've got a whole immense amount of things that, you have to take into consideration here. But anyways, it's a great situation to be in if you win the lottery, but the chances are that none of us will. So there you go. All right, the 208 rolls on after this. It's Friday. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back right after this. Let's talk about the big stories you're talking about this week. A little recap of the news in our area, the 208 callback, and we're going to start with our top story on Monday because a lot of you still talking about this. Reclaim Idaho was celebrating a major accomplishment a week ago today. After delivering about 100,000 signatures to the Secretary of State's office, the Quality Education Initiative was officially certified to be on the November ballot. Now, Reclaim Idaho is asking Idahoans if they want to create a new tax bracket for individuals making $250,000 a year or more. The idea is to tax the top earners in the state of Idaho at a higher rate to raise extra funds for Idaho education. The critics of the campaign pointed out something pretty important this week. The initiative may raise taxes for Idahoans who earn far less than $250,000. How could that be? Well, this past legislative session, the Idaho legislature actually brought down tax rates for the existing tax brackets. The top bracket for Idaho is taxed at 6% right now. It was formerly 6.5%. Now, the initiative that Reclaim Idaho is putting together, it was drafted before the change to the tax rates this past session. So the petition they circulated and had people sign, it reflected the 6.5% number, not 6%. So the Idaho Attorney General and the Secretary of State say that if Idaho voters pass the initiative in November, it will in fact change the tax rate back to 6.5%. Now, Reclaim Idaho argues that they only want to add a tax bracket and they have no interest in altering the current rates. And this whole conversation comes down to a disagreement between Reclaim Idaho and the state of Idaho. Now, Reclaim Idaho argues that only the underlying portions of their petition should be up for vote. The state says that's not how the process works. They say the petition as a whole is up for vote. So could the petition be changed or redrafted by the AG's office or something like that before November? We asked the experts.
And the answer there again was no. The language was circulated in front of petitioners. The language that was circulated is the language that will go in the informational pamphlets that will go out to voters from our office in the coming months. So ultimately, back to the question, if enacted as drafted, will it disregard? It appears that it would disregard those 2022 tax cuts.
Reclaim Idaho disputes that, so long story short, there's a really good chance all of this ends up in a courtroom. We'll find out soon. Since 2012, the Idaho Republican Party has held a closed primary, meaning in order to be able to vote in the Republican primary, you have to be registered as an Idaho Republican. And during the GOP convention 2 weeks ago, one of the main talking points, stopping non-Republicans from switching parties so that they can jump in and vote in the primary. Now, some candidates even claiming that's why they lost their election bids this past May. So we asked the Secretary of State's office just how many people actually went and switched parties and then voted in the May primary. So here's what we can tell you. From January to April, with the deadline to change affiliation in time for the May primary falling on March 11th, Idaho saw 14,000 more Republicans join the ranks. But from April to July, there were more than 31,000 added to the rolls, a lot of those coming from the unaffiliated faction. And since that story last week, we've received several messages from you at home telling us about your decision to switch parties, 2 to the Republican Party and 1 to an independent. Here's what they told Brian Holmes on Wednesday about their decision to switch parties.
Today, this 76-year-old grandmother drove to Ada County Election Office and changed her registration from Republican to independent. Feels good to not be associated with them anymore. Good, but still sad. Still feel that way?
Yes.
Why?
They're insane. They're saying things and doing things that aren't proven, that aren't true. And it's, if you say it loud enough and long enough, maybe people will believe it.
So what you're saying, based on your decision to change your affiliation, you're not proud to carry that Republican designation anymore?
No, it's embarrassing.
And you said, I'm one of the unaffiliated voters that changed to Republican. It felt good. I'm staying put.
Right.
What felt good?
It was nice to have a vote actually count, or at least I perceived it as counting.
What changed your mind this year?
The Republican Party is trying to get even further away from the center. I believe that most people are somewhere in the center, a little right of center, a little left of center. but most people want to be somewhere in the center. I think it's just the loudest speakers on both sides that get all the attention.
You wrote and said, "I've been a lifelong Democrat, registered as an independent until this year. I am now a fully registered Republican, voted against McCrazy and for Little, and will be registered as a Republican forever."
That's correct.
Why is that?
It's just, it just really irks me that I have to have people tell me who to vote for and how I can vote. And I have voted Republican in the past.
Mm-hmm. Has that been hard for you?
No.
Why not?
Because I'm trying to vote for the best person for the job.
You can see the entire segment, and it's a good one, right now on the KTVB YouTube page. And we want to keep hearing from you, whether you switch from Democrat to Republican or vice versa, somewhere in between. For whatever reason, we want to hear from you. So please connect with us on our social media platforms, or you can send us an email if you're not on those. Our email is the208@ktvb.com. Otherwise, you can just search the 208 KTVB on your favorite social media platform. We're on there and responding. Maybe Brian Holmes will stop by and say hello to you. Should be nice tomorrow if you're a lizard. Quick update on our Moscow, Idaho cyclists currently racing in the Women's Tour de France. Veronica Ewers finished 40th out of 124 riders in the sixth stage of the race today. She currently sits in 14th place overall with just 2 stages left to go. This comes after her very first top 5 finish ever in her career on Wednesday. The race altogether ends on Sunday, so we'll be watching it through the weekend. By the way, this is the first time the Women's Tour de France has been held in 33 years. take a look at some of your comments. The first one real quickly from Jenny. It's Moscow, not Moscow. I said it wrong. Moscow's in Russia, so let's just be clear here. Anyways, Bill says, Joe, during the 60s and 70s, all talk was about the coming ice age. Boy, was that cold. We're still waiting for that one. Yeah, Bill, it's going to be 110 this weekend, so maybe we need it to cool down a little bit. All right, talking about some lottery winnings. Ken says, if I won the $1 billion, I'd buy a house and probably get outbid. In Idaho, you're probably right. Carl says, if I won $1 billion, the first thing I do is go to Disneyland. That's where champions go, because of course. And finally, this person says, 1 in 305 million. You're saying there's a chance? There is a chance. We'll find out this weekend if any of us won. See you Monday, or not. We'll find out.